complex. When it's a primary burial, which is not disturbed, we have the personal ornaments associated to one individual. So it's kind of a snapshot of what people were wearing in history in a specific funeral context. So we have three examples to try to show you how our approaches to this type of material and how it can also be a reference to interpret objects which are found in habitation settlement sites, which are much less informative on the context. Next slide, please. The first, so the three burials I will talk about is first La Madeleine, which is in the Dordogne region in southwestern France. Then one brief word about the Grotta dei Fanciulli. So it's in Italy, but it's kind of on the border almost with France. So it's also called sometimes Grotta des Enfants, a double child burial. And then the Lagar Velho child, which is found a little bit north of Lisbon, and which is dated to the Grecian time period, so a bit older than the other two. Next slide, please. So the La Madeleine child has been found in a rock shelter very close to the famous Vézère river. It's the hotspot for prehistory in France. The Dordogne and the Vézère river valley today completely by Middle Age structures. The site is completely different from what it was in the past. But next slide, please. In the 1940s, I think it was Jean-Denis Perroni who excavated the child who is around 4 years old, and the only thing we have left is this drawing he made, in which he shows that the child had ornaments on the head and on all around the neck and all articulations, so elbow, wrist, knees, ankles. And in the museum, there was a big box in which all the ornaments were together. So unfortunately, we don't know which ornament was found where, but we have the ornaments which were associated to the child, and we know that it was located in these areas on the child's body. So the dating is 10,190 BP. Next slide, please. And we have the most numerous category are these little, what we call Dentalium shells. They look like tusks of elephant. These are scufflepot shells. And these are more than 1,000 of them. And when I arrived at the museum as a student, I didn't know what do I have to look on them, what can I see, what can I do with these elements. So the first step was, next slide please, to imagine all the things one can do to make from this little tusk-like shell personal ornaments. So there were techniques of production, how you can snap them, you can sew them, you can break them in different ways. And you can also attach them as beads in different ways, either on a string or you can sew them onto clothing. So we did experimental archaeology to reproduce all these different techniques. And so, next slide, please. So for that, we needed reference collection. So we got our fellow students and go to the beach, and we spent 2 days collecting these Dentalium shells on the beach. Next slide, please. And on the left, you have the ones from the beach, natural reference collections, and on the right, you have fossil shell beads, because southwestern France also has very famous Miocene outcrops with a lot of fossil shells, in which there are also these scufflepot-like shells. Next slide. And we compare with another kind of reference collection. It's a burial which is dated to the same time period as the La Madeleine child, but which also has adults in the grave. So it was, unfortunately, it was also not very well preserved, but we only know there were in this site, which is called Madeleine, same date, there were about 8 individuals, 4 adults and 4 children. I may be mistaken, but there were adults and there were child, and also more than 1,000 Dentalium shells. So we can compare and see if there are differences or not. Next slide. So the first thing which is obvious is that the La Madeleine child beads are very small. They are on the top left, It's a curve with a peak around 6 millimeters. So that was obviously what they wanted to produce. These were small tubular beads of about 6 millimeters in length. In yellow, these are the fossil shells from the fossil outcrop. And in blue are the shells from the beach. And you see they are normally much bigger, so they must have been snapped. And the ones from the Lagar Velho, which has adults inside, the size of the beads is 12 millimeters, so the double of the ones we have. So the average size is about the double as the one we have for La Madeleine. Next slide, please. And you can show the same thing on the diameter of the extremities, because it's conical, tusk shape. So on the left, you have the maximum diameter side, and on the right, the minimum diameter side of the cone of the Dentalium shell. In red is the La Madeleine child ones, and in blue and yellow are the natural ones you can find on the beach or in the fossil outcrop. And the two, the red, which does not superimpose on the diameters of the natural reference collections, must have been made by humans. So it's not a taphonomical process on the site, because maybe things broke in situ during time, but it was clearly the aim of prehistoric craftsmen, of women, craftspersons, to make tiny shells which are smaller than the ones you find in natural collections. Next slide, please. Then, if you look a closer look, the first image with the extremities, we saw they are very different morphologies, but we don't know how to interpret these morphologies of the extremities of these Dentalium shells. So this is the result of the natural reference collections. So on the left, these are the ones from the beach. In the middle are the fossil ones, and on the right is the experimental reproduction. And you see different type of morphologies are present naturally. And if we break the shells independently, if we break them like this, or with 2 fingers, or whatever movement you make, it will always make a straight fractured border, which we only find here in age in fossil records naturally, but never on the beach for shells which are washed on the beach. So it's something which is due to pressure. And if we saw them with a flint knife, we have this stepwise typical feature. I don't know how you call it, but you can see it's very typical, and you don't find it on any natural reference collection. So it's clearly human-made. And when the flint tool escapes, because it's very tiny and difficult, you will have these parasitic striations, which is also a diagnostic criteria for sawing of this shell. So this is now, we have a picture of what we can find, what are natural extremities, what are extremities made by flexion, and extremities made by sawing. We can have a look in the next slide on what it looks, second part of the experiment is, because they are so tiny, and La Madeleine site is also known of being the Upper Palaeolithic site in Western Europe with the most needles. There are many needles found at the site. We also reproduced what happens to the shell when we pass the needle through the bead. So the smallest extremity will break in this typical manner, and we call it like a flute beak fracture. Next slide. So this is what we find on the archaeological material. We have on the top one, these look identical to what we see on the natural ones from the beach. We have also straight flexions very clearly on the second row. So these are made by flexion. And we have these stepwise, which are made by sawing, and even some have parasitic striations, which are due to the flint tool, which per accidentally makes another cut mark there. And then we have something which we did not see on the, on the top we have the fruit beak, which we interpret as being due to a needle which passes through the extremity is just a little bit too small. You get the needle through by force and it produces this type. And then we have these facets and a notch on the most largest extremity. And we think this facet is probably due to the fact that the bead was on the clothes or on the skin and was used like this during time to make a loose-wear facet. Next slide. Okay, that was the one I explained. Thank you, next one. So we think that the little Dentalium shells were produced especially for the child, and the aim was to produce small beads of about 6 millimeters. And we constructed this as being sewn onto clothes and worn in a vertical way because of the notch. So the string would pass like this and would create a notch because it hangs down and Earth's attraction makes the notch. There are a lot of needles on the side. Next slide, please. And when we measure the maximum diameter of the needles which were found on the Madeleine site, there are very small ones which could pass through the shells we find in the burial. So you can see the smallest needle can pass through all the shell beads from the Madeleine child. So we think that they were probably sewn with needles. Next slide, please. And there was one little lump which was in the box with the personal ornaments from Madeleine, which still had the beads in this way, so one next to the other. So that's our reconstruction. And next slide, please. Not only the Dentalium shells are very small, but we also have Turitella shells. And if we compare with natural reference collections, you see in red the size of the Turitella from the child, which are much smaller than what is available naturally. So they also chose particular size and not the largest one. They did not use for the child. Next slide. So we think that the Madeleine child had specific beadwork made for him, his, or we don't know if it's a male or a female, but for the child it was specifically made for the child. And we don't have it in the Madeleine adult burials, so it was really a miniaturization of all the bead types for the children. So this makes them have a special social status. They were visible and identifiable by smaller beads. Next slide, please. So this is maybe also the case for the Grotta dei Fanciulli, so the Grotte des Enfants, which is located in northern Italy on the Balzi Rossi caves, one of those you can see. Now there are hotels constructed, but at the time of Émile Rivière, when he excavated it more than 100 years ago. Next slide, please. He found these two little children with around their waist a lot of Cyclope shells. The name of the shell now is different name, but I still call them Cyclope like he did. Next slide, please. And when we measure these Cyclope shells and we compare them with natural occurrences of this shell species, in blue you see two different beaches. The ones from the Grotte des Enfants, Grotta dei Fanciulli, and from the La Madeleine are much smaller than the ones we find today on the beaches. So this might, so it goes, they really selected the smallest ones which are present. So populations of shells can grow bigger or smaller depending on sea surface temperature and environment. But this is a very big difference. So we cannot really prove if it's really a selection for the smallest ones or if the population of Cyclope shells at that time was growing smaller than today. Still something to be investigated further. But it's in any case interesting to know that they are smaller than what's present. Next slide, please. And another thing about beadwork is it's not only visual, but if you hang them on and they wear all around the waist, they make a noise. So it's also an acoustic element into beadwork, which may play also a role in choice and how they are sewn or attached in the beadwork. Next one, please. And the last example is the Lagar Velho chart, exactly the same age as the Madeleine chart, but it's dated to the Ravessian time period. Next slide, please. So just a picture, you can see the head is missing because there was on this site a bulldozer who made a road or some roadworks, and the bulldozer took the skull away, and the archaeologists were left with a big heap with fragments of the skull, and the rest of the skeleton was still in place. So it was excavated by the team of João Zilao, 15, 20 years ago. Next slide, please. So they very meticulously dated everything below the child, everything which was in the grave, and they came up with a very consistent dating around 23,900 or 24, so around 24,000 BP, Ravessian time period. Next slide, please. And you can see on the right the red deer canines, which were found together with the fragments of the skull, and with the rest of the skeleton, there were two tiny shell beads which belong to the species Neritina obtusata. So they were associated to the child. What can we do with these personal ornaments? Next slide, please. So we can compare with personal ornaments from other burials, because we have Saint-Germain-la-Rivière, which had about 80 red deer canines associated with one individual, an adult individual in southwestern France. We again have Malata-Verne, or the names Avennes-y-Poussières, doesn't matter too much, but also a very big collection of 200 red deer canines from a burial context, and other necklaces. So we can compare with big collections which are dated to one period to have variability of red deer canines in a natural population at a specific time. Next slide, please. And we can compare with what is found in contemporary sites in Portugal, dated to that period. So there are two sites, Lampado and Caldera, which have also only red deer canines and Neritina obtusata shells. So we can compare. Next slide, please. And red deer canines are very interesting elements because they are non-functional. So the red deer, they have the canines, but they don't use it to eat. It's just there, and the teeth is used over time very readily against the gum. And they are perfectly symmetrical. They only have upper canines, and there's a sexual dimorphism, so we know if it's from a male, a stag, or from a client, a female animal. Next slide, please. And they are, because they are used so slowly against the gum, we can also give age estimates. So the younger ones will be very globular, and then they get slowly use wear on it, and at the end, very old males will have kind of triangular teeth with a big use wear facet, and the female are more this morphology, and they are used more vertically, so they get rectangular at the end of their life. So we can have, next slide, age estimates again, and we can recognize the two teeth from the same animal. Next slide, please. So these are the variables you can take on red deer canines to have this information. So morphological, categorical, but also morphometrical ones. Next slide, please. And we have studied canines from populations of deer in England, from the island of Ron and the Richmond Park. So the rangers, they collected the teeth, and they know exactly this deer was born on that date. So this is a teeth from a 10-year-old animal, a female, and this is a teeth from a 5-year-old. So we could exactly have the reference, and by crossing the variables we took, we can have an age estimate for each canine. Next slide, please. This was on the morphological, the previous slide, and this is on the morphometrical ones. Next slide, please. So With that reference collection, now I can say that the 4 bedding canines from the Lagar Velho child were from 4 different animals, 2 males and 2 females. The males were relatively young because they don't have much loose wear on the crown, and the females were relatively old. Next slide, please. And if we compare their size to what's available in a big population of red deer, it's interesting to note that in red you can see the 2 females on the lower graph and the 2 males in the upper graph. They are so similar, but they are not from the same animal. So it looks like if the crafts people from Lagar Velho tried to create paired teeth. They are left and right each time, but they are different animals. And one hypothesis could be they wanted to create this pairing, but they could not, and they could not because they did not have the pairs. There must have been a system of exchanging the 2 teeth. So the hunter had the 2 teeth, and he had probably to share with somebody else. So this is a hypothesis. Of course, you cannot really prove it, but it's fascinating that they are so similar in size. The males on the one hand side and the females on the other hand side. So it's something which is not normal, I think. Next slide, please. I need some explanation. Next one. Okay, so well, we can pass. It says the same, so to say. And the techniques, to come to your question, for the techniques on the personal ornaments, we have 4 teeth and 4 different techniques or gestures. So it's 1 girl, 1 child, and we have 4 different perforation techniques, either scraping or gorging or moving. Next slide, please. And from the use wear analysis, we think we can reconstruct the way the strings were pulling, and then it would make an image like this. So the male teeth would be on the lateral sides attached, and the female would be a string pulling to the 2 sides. Okay, so like this. Thank you. Next slide. So we think because they are similar in size, males, female, left and right, that it was probably this was the way they were displayed, so symmetry way of display. Next slide, please. And then one last slide about the color of the Neritina obtusata shells. So again, we went to the beach, collected a lot of Neritina obtusata, which, as you can see on the right, can have different colors. They can be brown, red, yellow. But the brown and the green are much bigger than the reddish and the yellowish. Next slide. So based on morphometry, we think that the Neritina shells, which of course now don't have color anymore, because 23,000 years in the ground made their color disappear, but we think that they were probably yellowish. Next slide. And this is just a perforation technique. It's by pushing through the aperture. We have some diagnostic criteria to know how pressure, which kind of breakage pattern it makes. Next slide, please. And the fact that it was found together with the skull fragments suggests it was probably on the head. And the Paglici 25 from southern Italy is also dated to 24,000 years BP. So in the Gravettian time period in Italy, we have red deer canines, and they are on the front forehead. So probably the Lagar Velho child as well. Next slide, please. So that would be the reconstruction. And in this case, contrary to the La Madeleine, if we take settlement sites, the personal ornaments found over long times in settlement sites at the same time, we find only red deer canines and Neritina obtusata shells, so it looks like children and adults wear the same personal ornaments in the Gravettian at that time period, at least in Portugal. Thank you very much. I think that was the last slide. Yes, so there might be some difference between children wearing specific beadworks made especially for them as children, and children wearing beadworks made which are the same as for adults. So this might also have something to say about social organization. Yes, next slide. Thank you very much for your attention.